Hello everybody and welcome to another hobby cheating video. This week, GW was nice enough to send me this awesome Git Mob box, which clearly has some loose parts in it. And I immediately fell in love with Droggz, the new boss, the Goblin Boss. So that's what we're going to paint up this week. So let's get into it.
The strict technomancer that is Vincey V. Let us get to the technique and learn it, Vincey V.
Droggz is super cool. This little guy, Droggz, I don't know, the Goblin Boss. He's a chubby little goblin on a big, awesome wolf. What a wonderful model to paint. Whoever sculpted this, he did an amazing job. So I was really excited to get into this one, and today I wanted to take you through really the three key areas of the figure and how I end up tackling them. So we're going to talk about the skin, we're going to talk about the armor, and I'm going to show you a really cool trick for painting these sort of leather straps that appear on every model. And they're really annoying, but I'm going to make them super simple. So let's head over to the desk and let's get painting. Alright, so we're going to start with the skin. Now, this is really the most important part because it's his face and it's a goblin, and so we want to get it right. Now, the whole story of these goblins is that they're like sun worshippers, basically. So they're kind of weird versus the other goblins. And he has this big sun icon on his back, and if you look in the art, he's always very bathed in light and stuff. So we really want to push that. I want him to be very warm and have a lot of that tones to him. So you can see this is the paints I'm going to go ahead and use. Now I'm starting very dark, but then we're going to work up through all these different Pro Acryl paints, including some fluorescent yellow, to effectively get a really nice bright skin tone when all's said and done. So let's go ahead and start in on that skin. I'm going to begin with just base coating him with this very nice deep green. Now, I like this green because it has a little bit of a colder color to it, which is going to be helpful for our shadows, since we want to be so warm in the highlights. Warm highlights, cold shadows. So once I get him all nice and base coated in that very dark green, really nothing too complicated, turn the color of the paint, we're good to go. Now, one of the beautiful parts about orcs is that when you're working in, or goblins, is that when you're working in greens, they're very translucent colors, and so you don't have to worry about layer stuff as much, and as we're going to use a lot of yellows to highlight, again, those will blend very easily. So we're just going to work thin layers up from this point. So then I start working up to my next color of brighter green. Now with this one, this is actually going to be the majority color of the skin. So I go ahead and I cover basically almost all the skin except things that are completely downward facing planes. So anything that's facing upward is going to get this. Anything that's perpendicular to the ground, the sides of his face, all of that's getting completely covered. I only leave this, the darker color, the initial color, in the deepest recesses and the very downward facing things, so like the bottom of his underarm and stuff like that. Once I've got that, we're going to just continue to step up. I work up to my next lighter shade of green, and each time I'm covering less and less. Traditional layering, shingles on a roof, laying each one over top of each other, each layer covering less than the last. And you can see it actually blends pretty easy here. Again, because these colors I'm climbing up through integrate yellow as opposed to integrating white, which creates a lot of opacity, we actually get a nice smooth transition. I'm also working thinner as I build up into brighter colors, so there's sort of two keys. Using a non-white gives us easier blending, and working thinner gives us easier blending. So each time you see me here doing one layer of it, but keep in mind I actually do 2 or 3 layers of this, basically working my way around. I'm just not showing it all to you on camera, because you don't need to see me do the literal exact same step multiple times. But now as I get up to this to this step, I'm focusing in, and now I'm starting to leave a lot less covered, especially even on those upward-facing planes. Now I'm focusing in on the most upward-facing stuff. This is where we begin to integrate the fluorescent yellow. Now, this is actually a really fun trick for highlighting orcs and goblins. You can bring in a little bit of that fluorescent yellow, and it will really nicely lighten the color, while also giving you a really natural sunny highlight. So here again, I continue highlighting up, covering less and less, focusing on the nose, that kind of thing. Those ridges, the top of his eye, top of his cheekbone, his little fat rolls on his neck, because he's got a chubby little neck. This guy's awesome. I love this fig. Things like that, right? That gets focused here. So I continue building it up, again doing more layers, and only at the very end do I integrate just a small amount of that khaki, which in itself isn't a very bright white, it's still very mid-tone. as it were, but it's white. It's brighter than any other value I have here. I integrate that with the yellow. So I'm never just using like that pure khaki or anything like that. It's integrating with the yellow, the fluorescent yellow, and then into the green to create this very light color. And those are my final highlights, just touching the very edges of everything, making sure that I have everything nice and bright. Once that's done, then the key is we need to bring a little life into this. So here we're going to go for an Army Painter color that is a really nice sort of orcish dermis pinky tone. I actually mix this with a little bit of my mid-tone green to get a more desaturated green or pink color. I don't want it to be quite this intense for my first layer. I then work my way around hitting things like his lip and the insides of his ears and the tip of his very long little goblin nose, all these kind of things, the edges of his elbows, his knuckles, anywhere where there would effectively be quote-unquote blood nearer the surface. By showing a little bit of wear in that pink tone, it reminds us of humans and where humans have red tones, which equals blood, which equals life. It just makes the figure feel so much alive. The pink is also going to act as a nice complementary color to the green-yellow, and so bring a lot more contrast, and again, it makes the yellow-green punchier by having just small amounts of the pink integrated in. It really doesn't take much of it, and as I said, I'm working in like basically a sort of 50-50 mix between what you saw as the mid-tone yellow-green and this pink, and I lay that down. I then go in with just the primary pink, and I do just a few thin highlights on things like the lips, and the tip of the nose, the areas where I want it to be really prominent. With that good, the skin is ready to rock. I might do a little bit of glazing here or there off with some of the midtones, but basically we're good to go. Okay, next up is the armor. So with the armor, we're actually going to just start with the burnt red from Pro Acryl, and I put a nice base coat over everything. Just turn all the armor red, not a big deal. Now this is a nice dark red, it's got a little bit of brown tones in it, but it's also very warm. I'm going to work up with the colors you see here into quite a bright orange. I want to go into the orange tone here. Oftentimes with reds, we ask ourselves, do we want to go pink? Do we want to go orange? Do we want to go just super saturated red or white if it's super glossy? Lots of choices. The reason I want to go orange here is because we're continuing this warm infusion of yellow and sunshine and all of that stuff. So I begin by just lightly glazing in some black to create some deeper shadows. That's very simple. You can see very light glazing. I just want to kind of tone some of that red back. And then I begin working up the through the bright red tones and eventually into orange. Now you'll notice here at some point that all of the edges and everything get blacked out. That's so I could actually properly judge the color. Why did I do that? It's really important because when I'm working in especially these sorts of bright tones, eventually working my way up to the orange, it's very difficult to judge if you've gotten bright enough when you have the sort of zenithal color next to you. Now those edges will probably eventually be metal. I may actually keep them black. I may turn them gold. I'm not sure yet, but at this point in the process, but it doesn't matter. I want it to be dark so that way my eyes can actually accurately judge how bright I get with the reds. So as you can see here, I just continue highlighting up, eventually getting to that nice, really pure orange at the highest highlights. You'll notice I also am doing some edge highlights here and there on these nice little dividing lines where the light would catch on those edges, and that helps sell the illusion of that light coming from above. I also make sure to reinforce under the little spikes. It's really good sculpting, really nice detail where the spike is kind of pressed into this sort of armor, and so it's creating like a bulge underneath it, and where that bulge is, I give a little extra highlighting. So just work my way up through that red, through everything, up to that bright orange, and then we get this beautiful transition that just really kicks and feels very warm. Honestly, I really like how this came out. Running all the way up to the orange, I wasn't sure about it at first, but I thought it came out pretty cool. And again, it aligns with that warm, sunny tone that I want to feel throughout this whole figure. So with that and then the black there to kind of make sure that I've got everything in place, work my way around all the armor. Yet again, I do a few glazes of some of the reds, kind of bring it in line just to smooth everything out. Just like with the greens, working in these reds is really nice because they're so naturally translucent. You don't really get a lot of layer lines, and so that just makes your life a lot easier as you're working up in these thin layers. Okay, So that's the armor done and the skin done. Those are two major parts of the figure itself. That leaves us with one key area left. And it's these freaking straps. So, all right, we need to talk about sort of GW figures for a minute. And really this is true amongst a lot of sculptors. People love the look of these straps as opposed to just like a single bracer. So many figures from every army, regardless of their aesthetic or style, especially with GW, they love these like straps, these wrapped bandolier straps. I suspect because they take like a wash and dry brush or a contrast thing pretty well, but to do them and have them look really nice, where you like get the edges highlighted and stuff like that, is often really annoying because you gotta like, most people you would start, you paint them the midtone, you need to go in, you need to trace every edge, add a little texture. You've seen me do it in videos before. The problem is that just takes too long. It's fine if you're doing a display job where you have, 50, 60, 100, 150 hours to work on a figure. But good night, this is a goblin. I like this dude a lot. I think he's cool. He's like one of my leaders of the army, but I'm not going to spend that much time on him. I got to get these goblins on the table. I got a lot of goblins to paint. So, I'm going to show you the ultimate trick to get this done quickly. Okay, we're going to use just two simple brown tones. One is very light, one is sort of darker in a midtone. Great. I'm going to start by just base coating carefully each one of the straps in the very light color. This is this very nice sort of yellow-brown, kind of ochre color. It's great. Super bright. Don't worry about it. Like, it's going to look super weird and bright at the first step. Pick whatever bright color you want. You could use a light, very light brown. If you're doing gray ones, just pick a very, like gray straps, pick a very light gray. Doesn't matter. See how I just base coat all my way around? I'm leaving it dark intentionally in between. If you go over, if you get a little paint in between, don't worry. Just take a little black paint, re-knock in a dark line. You may have to do it anyways, depending on your initial zenithal. Kind of try, you get a few dark lines in there. Not a big deal. Okay, once it's all done, then we're going to take some of this warm brown. We're going to thin it way down so it flows off the brush really nicely. And what I'm going to do is just, as you can see here, I just trace the center of every band. And it's not actually that hard with a sharp brush. I just work my way around, tracing the center of each band, leaving only a thin line of the bright original yellow-brown on the edges. Free, instantaneous edge highlights on all of these bands. That is way simpler than trying to trace the edges. So much easier. So I just work my way around the whole figure, every stupid strap. I start with one thin line down the center, and then you see me just slowly build it out. Pushing, pushing, pushing very carefully towards the outside. This is so much easier, and it gives you these perfect, clean, beautiful edge highlights, right? Because it looks like you're the master of just nailing the edge of this thing. Easy. Easy peasy. Okay? Once that's done, I then go back to the original yellow ochre, thin it way, way down, and here I just take a little bit of, and put a little hashy texture on like the bottom, a few on the top, a little bit here and there of this hashy, scratchy, texture on the leather to make it look more realistic as leather, so it's kind of scuffed up, and you can see the dry and the cracks in it and things like that. Now, some extra steps, you can take some of that brown, the warm brown, mix it with a little black. You could do like some shadows on the bottom. You could retrace any thin lines in between if you want to. There's lots of cleanup steps you can do. But this is such an easy way to do this really annoying element I find all the time. I hope it's super helpful to you. So with that done, I then off camera did all like little details that are just, tiny things like the bone stuff, his black boots, things like that. For his interior clothes, I wanted them to be actually a little cold, but I still warmed them up with the same thing. So I actually used this very like blue, gray, black color just to quickly get some things on it. I wanted a little bit of a cold tone in there in these minor recesses or these minor areas to act as a contrast and help pop out the rest of the warm stuff. Okay, so with all those little things done, here's how he looks right now. He's still not assembled. I don't have a shield on, obviously. And importantly, I don't have the wolf done. And you might think, Vince, isn't the wolf kind of important? It's his big mount. You bet it is. It sure is. And so what I want you to do is come back next week and we're going to paint the wolf. Okay? because I want to actually deep dive on how to do big furry creatures like this and take you through the way to do fur on a creature like this and have it look compelling and cool. So this was the Goblin. Next week, the Wolf. All in all, I hope you liked this. If you did, give it a like. Subscribe for additional hobby cheating. We've got new videos here every Saturday. If you've got any questions about anything in this paint job or painting goblins or painting in general, drop it down in the comments below. I always answer every question asked. If you want to support the channel, hey, there's lots of ways you can do so, and it is really appreciated. There are links down below, affiliate links for everything that you see me use here. Picking your hobby supplies up through those affiliate links is super helpful. And it doesn't cost you anything extra. In fact, it usually saves you money. There's discount codes down there with those affiliate links often. So, give those a look. It really does help support the channel. There's also the games Uncle Adam and I make. And of course, there's our Patreon, focused on review and feedback and taking your next step on your hobby journey. As always, though, I really hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you'll come back and join me next week for the Wolf. And as always, we'll see you next time.